Welcome for the week 2. We talk about the chapter summary and analysis. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. Grammar literary quote. Chapter summary. Chapter 20. Mr. Bubble visits Mrs. Connie, the widow matron of the workhouse, to deliver some wine. Mrs. Connie offers him tea. Mr. Bubble slowly moves his chair closer to Mrs. Connie and kisses her on the lip. An old barber woman interrupts them to report that old Sally, a woman under Mrs. Connie's care, is close to death and wishes to tell Mrs. Connie something's irritated. Mrs. Connie lives alone in Mrs. Connie's room. Mr. Bubble takes an exact inventory of the furniture. In chapter 24, Mrs. Connie into old Sally's room. The dying woman awakens and asks that her other beside companion be sent away. She then confesses that one she once robbed a woman in her care. The woman had been found pregnant on the road, and Sally had attended the childbirth. The woman had given Sally gold locket, saying it might lead to people who would care for the child. The child's name was Oliver. Sally died, and Mrs. Connie left. She told the nurse who attended Sally that Sally had nothing to say after all. In chapter 25, Crockett arrived in Fucking. Fucking had learned from the newspaper that robbery had failed. Crockett informed Fucking that Oliver had been shot and claimed that either population of the area then came after them. Crockett said that he and Sal Plate left Oliver in it. In 26, chapter 26, Kraken rushed to pub called the Three Cripples to look for a man named Monk. Not finding him, he hurried to Cy residence. After Cy residence, he finds Nancy, who in drunken stupor report that Cy is hiding. Kraken related Oliver's mission, and Nancy cried that she hoped Oliver is dead, because she believed living fucking is worse than death. Fucking replied to Oliver it was hundreds of pounds to him. He returned his house to find monks waiting for him. Monk asked why fucking had chosen to send Oliver out on such a mission rather than make the boy into a simple pickpocket. It became clear that Monk had some interest in Oliver. Monk was looking for Oliver and saw him the day Oliver was arrested. Moreover, fucking noted Monk wanted Oliver to be made into the hardened chip. Monk became alarmed. Thinker he see the shadow of woman. The two stopped talking and left fucking house. In 27, Mrs. Connie flushes returned to her room. She and Mr. Bubble drink spark peppermint together. They flit and cake. Bubble mentioned that the current master of the workhouse is on his deathbed. He hinted that he could fill the vacancy and marry Mrs. Connie if blushes and content. Bubble travelled to inform Sowerberry that his service will be needed for old Sally. Bubble happened upon the shallows, fleeting of Claypole, Ulster, and the kitchen. When Noel tells Charlotte he wants to kiss her, Bubble lectures them for their immoral way. In chapter 28, the night of the Flareland robbery, Oliver wakened Delores. He got up and stumbled over to the same house. I tried to get him to rob. Inside, Mr. Geller and Mr. Brittle two seven regal the other seven with the tail of the nice eagle, presenting themselves as a reinterpreted hero. Although people knocked at the door, frightened everyone, Britain opened the door to find Oliver lying on the stove. They exclaimed that Oliver was one of the safe and dragged him inside. The nice, wealthy mistress of the mansion called downstairs to ask if the poor creature badly wanted. She sent Bridle to fetch a doctor in Constable, while Gilly Charlie carried Oliver up to analyzes from chapter 23 to 28. By contrasting two kinds of faith, Dickens saw how his culture is quick to condemn more obvious acts of theft, but ignore theft that occurs in more subtle way. After presenting Sai and Cracked butchered attempt at theft, the novel quickly shifts to the scene of a world different from of chivalry. Mrs. Carney, the middle-class matron of the workhouse, enjoy far luxury than the pauper resident. They are crammed into tiny, unheated spaces while Mrs. Carney enjoy a room to herself with a blazing fire during a brightly cold winter. The amenity of her apartment, which from Mr. Bubble, eye and heart in direction represent money would have been more justly spent on the proper under her care. Her lifestyle is based on self but because it's robbing those who have nothing herself will never never acknowledge. Fact neither woman is thinking of having bachelor in their house. He proceeds to to attend Oliver for a long while. When he returned, he asked the woman if they had actually seen the theft. They have not, and Thin Galley has enjoyed the commendation for his bravery. He has not told the woman that as if thought in a small boy. The lady accompanied the sergeant to see the culprit for the first time. In chapter 30, upon seeing Lulliver, Miss Rose exclaimed that he cannot possibly be a burglar unless older. It will mean have walked him into the street. She begged for her aunt not to send the child to prison. Mrs. Malley replied that she intended to send him to prison nonetheless. They wait all day for Oliver to awake in order to determine whether he is a bad child or not. Oliver related his story from that evening, bring tear to eye of his audience. Mrs. Lawbury is downstairs and out in the galley. Brito can swear before the constable the Oliver is the same boy of they saw in the house, and the night before the manual police officer from London, summoned by Brito and Galley that the morning, arrived to assess the situation. In chapter 31, Duff and Brito, the officer, examine the crime scene. While the surgeon and the woman try to think of a way of conceal over what is the crime, the officer determined that two men and a boy were involved, judging uh, from the footprint in the side of the window. Mr. Lobsman told them that it's Gilly Merlin mistook Oliver that for the guilty party. He told them that Oliver was wounded accidentally by a springing gun while passing on the neighbor properly. Gilly Bridle stated that they cannot swear that he is the boy they saw that night, and the officer declared, and the matter is settled without incident. In chapter 32, who can tell how the sin of the peace quiet through? thing into the minds of Penrose, dwell in close and noisy place, and carry them own presence deep into their jet. Over a period of week, Oliver slowly began to recover. He begged for some way to repay his benefactor kindness. They tell him that he could, so after recover his health, he lamented not being able to tell Brownlow and Mrs. Barwin that it has happened to him. Mrs. Loban took Oliver to London to see them. To Oliver's bitter disappointment, he and Losman discovered that Brownlow, Mrs. Barwin, and Mrs. Gramwick have moved to the West Indies. Indeed, Mrs. Malley and Miss Rose then take him to the countryside. In the blissful rural environment, Oliver Hall improved vastly as his reading and writing skill. He and the lady become greatly attached to each other during the months they spent there. So he analyzes chapter 29 to 32. Though Rose's reaction to Oliver Deacon represent delinquency as a problem determined by culture rather than by innate character. Upon seeing Oliver, Rose imagined his entire history and the clan. Unlike most adults who have tried to second guess him, Rose reported about his past and personally accurate. She surmised that Oliver took in the attempt badly because he never known a mother love, because he suffered ill usage and blow and the want of bread. She named all the miserable conditions of poverty that have driven him to hard with men who have forced him to jail, like Brownlow. And unlike the English legal system, the Malay believe in forgiveness and kindness. Dickens used those characters who believe that Oliver is innately good but born in a bad environment to show that why can be combated by improving the material condition of the poor rather than by punishing them. Chapter 33, without warning, Rogue fell ill and Sarah favor. Mrs. Malley sent Oliver to mail and letter requesting restaurant assistance. On his return journey, Oliver stumbled again and the tall woman wrapped in the car. The man cursed Oliver, asked what he's doing there, and then fall wildly to ground, writing and informing Oliver sexual hap for the man before he returned home and forgot the incident entirely. Rose's condition declined rapidly. Her husband arrived and examined her. He started there is a little hope for her recovery. However, Rose soon drew back from the brink of death and began to in a 34, as you can see, Gally, Harry Malley and Mrs. Malley's son arrived to see Rose. Harry angry that his mother has not written him sooner. Mrs. Malley replied that Rose need long-lasting love rather than dream of a youthful suitor. Mrs. Malley told her son that he must consider the public opinion in his desire to marry Rose for love. She mentions Stan Rose's name, although Rose herself never commit any crime. Public opinion may well convict her for a misdeed for her parent. Mrs. Malley hinted that Rose's soul stated may thwart her ambition to run for parliament and that though thwarted ambition might eventually destroy his love for Rose. In chapter 35, Harry Gill rushed to Oliver Ed and upon hearing Quakin and men, they searched Will around the house but no trace for them. They circulate the description of the Quakin but no clue to his whereabout Harry declared his love to Rose. Although she returned his love, he says he cannot marry him owing to circumstances. However, his situation is much higher than her, and she does not want to hinder his ambition. Harry stated that they plan to propose marriage once more term, but that is if she again refuse, he will not mention it again. In chapter 36, before Harry and Losbien depart, Harry asks that Oliver secretly write him a letter every 2 weeks, tell him everything Oliver and the lady do and say. From a window, Rose carefully watched the cock carry Harry and Losbien. In chapter 37, the narrator told that Mr. Bumble has married Mrs. Corney and become the master of the workhouse. He regret giving up his position as a builder and he regretted giving up his bachelorhood even more. After morning of bickering with his wife, he stopped in a pub for a drink. A man in a dark cap is sitting there, and he recognized Mr. Bumble as the former widow. He offered Mr. Bumble money for information about old Sally, the woman who attended Oliver, but Mrs. Bumble, Mr. Bumble informed him that old Sally is dead, but mentioned that he know a woman who spoke to the old woman on her deathbed. The stranger asked that Mr. Bumble bring this woman to see him the following evening. He gave his name as analyzes the relationship between Harry and Rose illustrates that although married based on love is difficult, they can value that is more highly than married based on social station. However, Rose and Mr. Melly both believe that married based on love is problematic. Rose refused to marry Harry for the same reason that Mrs. Melly says she should not. Rose called her a friendless, portionless girl with a blight up on her name. A penniless, nameless girl, she said to Harry that a friend will suspect that. She suddenly yelled it into your first passion and frustrated myself on all your hope and project. In other words, she feared that outsider will believe that she slept with Harry outside of the wedlock and secured his hand in the marriage in that way. Thus she demonstrated her awareness of the tendency of the respectable society to assume the worst about individuals of low social standing and tendency that have almost ruined Oliver's life time and again. Nancy confesses to Rose that she is who can kidnap Oliver in his entrance to Mr. Branlow. She threatened that she overheard Monk felt that is Oliver's brother. Monk wants Oliver's identity to remain unknown so that Monk himself can claim their family full inheritance. Monk would kill Oliver if he could do so without endangering himself. He has also promised to pay fucking Oliver if recap Rowe offered to help Nancy live the life of crime. Nancy replied that she cannot because she is attracted to side despite of the abusive way. She refuses Rose's money. Before leaving, Nancy informed Rose that she can be found on London Bridge between 11 and 12 every Sunday night in case further testimony is needed. Chapter 38. During a storm, Mrs. Um, Mr. Bumble traveled to a short section of the near town and a swollen river mid Mang is bailing while the bubble shiver in fear. Mr. Bubble coolly bargained with the monk. Chapter 39. By Bill cited the read and Sue and Nancy ruined him in sudden respect, Sally and the shoe. Sai demanded fucking give him the money. Nancy fucking travel and Nancy and fucking travel to fucking hunt is about the world into the store of the cost and among arrive and asked to speak to fucking alone. In chapter 40, Petty R. Lady serves the reason for having one felling of the woman laughing for having that from a comfort and a pride into a new mean of violence and suffering. So not longer Nancy Rose meeting Oliver tells Rose that he saw Mr. Brownlow on the street. As we can see, this is a picture that so and his way. So Barwin after their happy reunion, Brownlow and Rose rely on information to Miss Cicely and Lesbian. So the title of Oliver is despairingly simply, and although it does not more than instead in protagonist name and the central mystery of novel in fact. So Oliver mentioned how much with the fall taken and other trust upon him. They can conceal that the situation to mastery of his true identity, leaving just a clue and then there in order to move the plot forward. Whereas people seek to conceal their identity for their own personal gain, Oliver identity intertwined with the monk identity, and in connection between the two of them have shroud both the identity and mastery. So thank you very much for this. So the week two that we have around 10 chapter and analyzes what that I want to send you the message. Don't forget to read and don't forget to log on the AU learning online learning system elearning.au.cloud. Remember that if you log in system and the system count the attendance count how many how much time you spend for reading, and especially don't forget to take the quiz every chapter of every week. So thank you very much for your paying attention.